There is no way that we could live without these materials. It's all about how we use them.
So Vinod, I am really excited to geek out about two things that we share in common: a deep love of science. In fact, talking with you, I just remember how much I love just learning about the world, but on the other hand, people, and why what we do actually matters to people. Yeah. But before I get into any of that, I got to research you a little bit more here and saw that you have 150 patents.
Yes.
What are these patents, and how did you get 150 patents?
So all these patents are mostly on semiconductors or, chips and design. That's where I spend most of my lifetime in my early career. Why 150? Because I have a personal goal to hit 222. That's one of my mentors who had 221 before he passed away, actually 2 years ago. And believe me, on his last day before he left, or he filed his final patent, and he said, beat this. So I have it as a personal agenda to beat that. I'm not sure if I'll beat that, but we'll see. Time will reveal it.
Have you met innovations that you just have gone down the path and been like, yeah, no, I'm not solving that one?
Yes. So some of the best decisions I think I always made is like, yeah, I'm staying out of that. I'm not going to do that, right? Because oftentimes when you spend, because any innovation, right, you have to spend X number of, I would say, weeks or months to really understand whether this is going to make it or not, right? Sometimes I worked on projects that were almost as long as a year. And the biggest decision or the most toughest decision is to let it go. Because like you look back like, holy God, I've spent a whole year on it. I'm going to look bad to my boss if I say, oh, this is not going to work out, I'm going to move on. But, having that tenacity to make that call and say, I've worked a year on it. I've got some good learnings. I'm going to apply it on elsewhere, but I'm not going to drive this into a product, right? And this might be one of the reasons why a lot of companies are afraid to do innovation, because they're worried about that failure part. And most of the organizations, they do not embrace failure, right? Failure is a very important piece of innovation. The more you fail, the better your products are. At least I believe that way. So, but if the company does not allow people to embrace failure, then they naturally become a less innovative company because they're not taking risks. They're going to make calculated guess. And so whatever they bring as a product or whatever they try to do is probably an iterative of what they've already been doing, right?
So you also mentioned there, I would say, like bold innovation, right? You had this idea. You said, hey, here's the difficult challenge. It's the iPhone. It's this. Let's go after those things.
Yeah.
Why? Why do that? Just your own, this looks interesting?
No.
Why push?
So it's a very simple answer for me, because the way I look at it, if I'm going to work on a problem, I would rather work on a problem that is bold. Because I'm going to put the same amount of effort, and I think the outcome would be the same. I will solve the problem. I would rather be happy solving a bigger problem that would really make a difference, right? Because of that mentality I built myself in, I look at all problems as equally challenging. So I'm not like afraid to say, oh my God, that's a big problem that I don't want to touch it because I don't know how long it'll take for me to fix it. People who have that mentality, those are the ones that struggle to really go out of the box or really do something big, right?
So why do polymers matter?
I think it's in a fabric of everything that we touch, right? Like, I can tell you that you're probably touching a product that has plastics, polymers in it. The dress that we wear that has stretch fibers in there or heat materials in there, your laundry detergents, the car that you drive, the steering that you touch, the dashboard that you touch. These are all plastics. These are all polymeric materials, right? There is no way that we could live without these materials. These are, I call them God-given gifts to mankind. It's all about how we use them, how we effectively use them, and how we effectively take care when the usage is done. So I think they matter because imagine without that, we cannot survive.
So what challenges are the biggest that are faced with the polymer industry?
I think, polymers has a bad reputation, right? Plastics generally have bad reputations, right? So how do you really make sure that you address some of those as you are bringing products to the solution, right? Sustainability is a very important factor, but there's a lot of drivers that drive sustainability, right? So that's a big challenge I think I see. As you replace materials with polymeric materials, there's always an end of life requirement, right? The funny thing is, when Toyota made Prius cars, when that came, like almost 20 years ago, right? The first generation Prius came in. Nobody talked about end of life of those batteries at that time, right? A lot of those batteries went into landfill, right? Windshields, right? When they break, they also go into landfill, right? But now, people are starting to talk about end of life because it's very important. And it's funny, when I interview younger candidates, fresh graduates, the first thing they ask is, what is your sustainability goals, right? How are you making sure your waste is actually not going into landfill, right? So it's like common. People are expecting it, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge that plastics, polymers in general have to face, right? And we are going to overcome them in the next, because we only have one planet. There is no second Earth, right? I mean, we can probably imagine there's another planet in a different galaxy, and hopefully one day we'll be able to travel time in just 24 hours.
I wouldn't mind some Star Trek in my life.
Yeah, but I don't know if it will happen between our life generation, but at least what we should do is how can we save our planet and how do we help, as a part of the ecosystem, right? I think that's one big challenge.
How is sustainability driving innovation?
Yeah, so looking at carbon neutral, right? So how do you reduce carbon footprint to begin with, right? That's by putting in biopolymers and so on, but really looking at recyclability, right? And also, how do you eliminate landfill as much as you can, right?
I've heard so many different things about the true recyclability of even plastics that say they're recyclable, and the economics of it, and do they actually end up in landfills? Just demystify this for folks. What actually happens to our plastics?
I think there's a lot of recyclability that is happening today. Two countries which are really good in recycling, Japan and Germany. And the reason is very simple, because every human being that lives in that country is being tasked with properly recycling his plastic bottles. So they separate, Japan is quite crazy. I mean, they have 7 different bins. Not 1, not 2, 7, right? The bottle, the wrap, the cap, the liner, right?
So it is economical to recycle it if it is properly separated.
Correct. And the reason why they're able to do is government is actually interfering and making sure and giving incentives and helping companies to do that. That doesn't happen here. I think government needs to put policies in, help companies, and most importantly, if everybody starts doing their own innovation, right? They're trying to solve the problem in their own way, mostly looking at cost as a matter, right? But imagine if all the plastic makers of all of Americas come together and they work together to do this. This is what innovation hubs, clusters should be enforced at, really solving the sustainability problem.
So in Akron, we have the polymer cluster,
yes.
And I know you're active in there where they're trying to pull companies together, University of Akron, all those things.
I think that's a great example, right? But I think that needs to be on steroids.
What's it going to take for our region to really lead in smart manufacturing?
If I were to do a startup, I can tell you for sure I would never do a startup here in Ohio. Every time there's grants that comes out, right, like regional grants and so on, right, Ohio does not get a fair share of grants like what California or Texas or Boston get, right? Why is that disparity, right? It's a vicious cycle. You keep giving grants there, everybody's going to keep going there. That's why I say I will probably go to California or to Boston to do my tech startup, not in Ohio, because I know there's a lot more grants there. But I think we need the state government involved. We want our law policymakers to really help us to say, hey, we're going to get a whole chunk of grant for Northeast Ohio. Because we know we are really good in healthcare and really good in manufacturing. We can do a lot more, right? I mean, in tech sector, right?
Yeah, tell me more about that. That seems like very much a holy grail.
I think we have all the bolts and the nuts and bolts. We have the gears to make the toy. But most importantly, we need government to really fund, to provide grants, and make sure the grants are only for when companies work closely with universities, but to have an end product that is sustainable, not just talk about sustainability and do stuff, but really connect it to an end product or a solution that the industry. Once we have these things, and of course, bringing in small to medium entrepreneurs so that their business, like we can allow them to grow. That helps to actually grow the workforce talent by automatically. So now we don't have to worry about, oh, we don't have this workforce talent, right? So I think government regulation policy, funding, a culture to incubate startups, and really getting collaboration between public universities, great universities, cluster innovation companies. If we can do that, then I think we could really lead